Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into a figure who, well, really embodies a huge political paradox. Anwar Sadat.
Yeah, a fascinating character.
We're talking about a man jailed for plotting against the British, a key revolutionary in modern Egypt's founding, who then leads his nation into war, becomes a Nobel Peace Laureate, and then the end. Assassinated by his own military.
Right, during that state parade in October 81, it's just quite the trajectory.
It really is.
And our sources today, they track exactly that journey. How does someone go from, a staunch nationalist, born poor, 13 siblings,
Right.
into this global peace icon? And maybe more importantly, why did that peace effort spark such fury back home?
That's what we're digging into.
How does that even happen? The nationalist hero becomes revered globally, but reviled domestically, at least by some powerful groups. So understanding that break, we've got to start with his revolutionary credentials, right? Exactly. You can't really get the impact of Camp David without understanding first the shadow of Nasser and just how deep Sadat's military nationalism ran. He graduated Cairo Military Academy, 1938?
Yeah, 1938. Joined the army, served in Sudan.
And crucially, that's where he met Jamal Abdel Nasser.
Which sets up one of the most transformative partnerships in modern Middle East history.
Absolutely. That partnership really drove the revolution. Sadat, Nasser, a few other officers, they founded the Free Officers Movement.
A goal.
Simple, radical, get Egypt free from British control, completely.
And Sadat wasn't just talking about it. He took huge risks, didn't he? Like during World War II.
Oh, yeah. Very risky. He was actually trying to coordinate with German forces to push the British out.
Wow.
That's how committed he was to independence. And, well, that landed him in prison in 42.
Oh, he got out a couple of years later.
He did. But it shows he wasn't just an armchair revolutionary. He was in the thick of it. Arrested again later, too, suspected in the death of a pro-British minister.
So he spent a lot of the 40s underground, basically, dodging the authorities.
Pretty much, but that dedication, it pays off eventually. 1952 arrives.
The coup.
Yes. Sadat was right there, integral to the coup that overthrew King Farouk I, birth of the Egyptian Republic.
And then Nasser becomes president, the big symbol of Pan-Arabism, and Sadat.
Sadat takes on various high-level government jobs, so this period really cements him. Co-founder of the revolution, anti-imperialist to the core, a key guy in the new system.
Okay, so established as the ultimate insider, a nationalist hero, but, revolutionary success doesn't always last, especially when you face major military defeats.
Right, and that's the pivot point, from that nationalist high to, well, harsh geopolitical reality.
Let's jump to the wars. The first massive blow, 1967, the Six-Day War. Just a disaster for Egypt and the whole Pan-Arab idea.
Total catastrophe. Our sources are clear. Egypt's air force was crippled almost instantly. Huge losses.
And the big one, losing the entire Sinai Peninsula to Israel. Psychologically, strategically.
That is
Devastating.
absolutely devastating. It shattered that myth of Arab military strength. Sadat, still under Nasser then, was trying everything, even looking to the Soviets for help.
But that Soviet support was always tricky, wasn't it?
Always conditional, never quite reliable enough. Then Nasser dies in 1970.
And Sadat, as vice president, steps up. He inherits a nation that's, well, hurting.
Deeply defeated, economically fragile, disillusioned. He's in charge of a country feeling utterly humiliated.
He needed something. A win, a way to restore pride. Which leads directly to 1973, the Yom Kippur War.
Exactly. He launches this massive, coordinated surprise attack with Syria, right on the Jewish holiday, Yom Kippur, in October.
And initially,
it was stunning. Egyptian forces crossed the Suez Canal, pushed into the Sinai, really shocked the Israelis. A huge morale boost, even if temporary.
it seemed like it worked for a moment. It validated the military, validated Sadat.
For a moment, yes. But here's where things get complicated, and you see the constraints Sadat was under. That initial success didn't last.
Why not?
Well, superpower politics kicked in. The tide turned when the U.S. rushed massive military aid to Israel. And Sadat saw the writing on the wall. Egypt could score an initial punch, maybe, but they couldn't win a decisive long-term war against Israel if the U.S. was always going to back them.
So even the 73 war, despite the initial gains, didn't really solve Egypt's core problems.
Not fundamentally. The war ultimately left Egypt economically drained and with serious internal divisions. Perpetual war, Sadat realized, meant perpetual weakness, perpetual poverty.
And that realization,
Yeah.
That's the big shift.
That's the turning point that ultimately cost him everything.
Yeah.
Facing this economic desperation, he concluded the only way forward for Egypt was a complete pivot, away from endless conflict towards peace with Israel.
This is also when he introduced his economic policy, Infitah, the opening.
Yes, exactly. Let's talk about Infitah because it's key to the domestic backlash later.
Okay.
So Infitah was Sadat's plan to liberalize the economy, move away from Nasser's state-controlled socialism, open up to Western investment, private business.
Trying to jumpstart the economy.
Right, get cash flowing. But it was also political. It helped him consolidate power, created a new class of wealthy Egyptians loyal to him, not necessarily to the old Nasserite ideals.
So it was about money, but also about shifting the power base internally.
Precisely. He's changing the whole identity of the nation, from socialist, pan-Arab confrontation to economic opening and pragmatism. But peace was essential for that new vision.
Which meant doing the unthinkable.
Absolutely. And this leads us to the moment that just redraws the map, really. Earns him the Nobel Prize, but sets the stage for the end. What he did next was just incredibly bold.
What was it?
November 1977, Sadat gets on a plane and flies to Israel, visits Jerusalem.
Wow. Used to pause on that.
Oh.
The leader of the largest Arab nation visiting the capital of the enemy state.
First time ever. Any Arab leader. And he knew the risks. He did it despite furious opposition from basically every other Arab leader. They saw it as utter betrayal.
Betrayal of the Palestinian cause of Arab unity.
Exactly. But Sadat went anyway. That level of political gamble, it's astonishing.
And that courage, that gamble, leads straight to Camp David in 1978.
It does. Long, tough negotiations in Maryland. U.S. President Jimmy Carter mediating between Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin.
What was the core deal they hammered out? The sources emphasized it was a trade-off.
A massive trade-off, driven by Sadat, focusing purely on what he saw as Egypt's national interests, putting it above that broader pan-Arab solidarity.
So what did Egypt get, and what did they give?
Okay, the big prize for Sadat. Israel agreed to return the entire Sinai Peninsula to Egypt, full control. That was huge for Egyptian dignity.
And in return?
In return, Egypt gave Israel full, formal recognition, established diplomatic relations, guaranteed Israeli ships could pass freely through the Suez Canal. Critically, it ended the state of war between them that had existed since '48.
So he got the land back, got peace, potentially stabilized the economy's future. But the sources mention this came at a high price for Palestinians.
Yeah, that phrase is really important. It captures the split. Camp David basically took the biggest Arab military power out of the equation regarding the wider Arab-Israeli conflict. Other Arab leaders felt Sadat had abandoned the Palestinians, given up their collective leverage.
But internationally, he was hailed as a hero. He and Begin got the Nobel Peace Prize in '78.
They did. And Sadat's Nobel speech, it had this almost prophetic tone, quote, "Through me, eternal Egypt has echoed. Let us end the war. Let us build a new life based on justice and truth." He truly believed he was saving Egypt.
Even if it meant alienating almost everyone else in the Arab world.
Right.
And here's the tragedy. The peace that won him global acclaim simultaneously painted a target on his back at home. This is the final act, the backlash.
The international applause was completely drowned out by the anger simmering regionally and crucially inside Egypt. The Arab League suspended Egypt immediately, moved its headquarters out of Cairo. The sense of betrayal was immense.
But it was the internal anger that proved fatal. You mentioned Infitah earlier. How did that economic policy contribute to the violence?
Well, Infitah, the economic opening, it did bring in some money, but it also made inequality much worse, or at least much more visible. You had this new class of millionaires seen as corrupt.
Yeah.
While many ordinary Egyptians were really struggling with rising prices, inflation, it fed this narrative that Sadat had traded away national honor for a corrupt Western-style capitalism that only benefited a few.
And politically, he wasn't tolerating dissent about any of this, was he?
Not at all. To push through the peace treaty and the economic changes, he became increasingly repressive, purged old Nasser loyalists, cracked down hard on freedom of expression.
And then came the big crackdown just before he died.
Yes, September 1981, just weeks before the assassination. Our sources highlight this. He arrested over 1,500 political opponents, Islamists, leftists, intellectuals, members of Islamic Jihad. A huge sweep.
So he was directly confronting the most organized opposition groups right at the end. How did that connect to the military plot?
By hitting the Islamic groups so hard, He alienated elements within the military and intelligence services who had sympathies there, or at least felt he was going too far. The assassination itself was carried out by soldiers led by Lieutenant Khalid Islambouli,
Right.
who was part of that Islamic Jihad movement Sadat had just cracked down on. He was killed by his own soldiers during a parade, celebrating the 73 war, the very war that led him to seek peace in the first place.
The irony is just staggering. The revolutionary founder, killed by the institution he helped build because of the peace he made.
When you piece it all together, Sadat's path to peace looks less like sudden idealism and more like, well, a calculated move born out of economic desperation and military stalemate. He got what he wanted for Egypt the Sinai back, an end to the costly war with Israel.
But that victory fractured the Arab world, and it unleashed forces inside Egypt. Ideological anger, economic resentment, religious opposition that ultimately consumed him.
Exactly. It created this internal storm. And maybe only a revolutionary leader, someone who had fundamentally reshaped the country once, could create such a powerful backlash when trying to reshape it again.
It makes you think about his Nobel speech again, that call for peace based on justice and truth. Given the fierce opposition, his assassination, you have to wonder, was the peace he achieved ultimately seen as just by those who had backed the nationalist cause for so long?
Or was it a necessary gamble, a pragmatic choice for Egypt's survival, but one whose compromises made his own sacrifice almost inevitable? That's the really tough question Sadat's legacy leaves us with.